I want to let you know that the devil is mad at you and that you, as one of God's chosen, are going to go through something that not everybody else is going to go through. And let me tell you why you're going to go through it. Because you have decided in your life, in your mind, in your spirit, you have decided to live for the Lord and to obey Him. You, God's chosen, are going to go through things that not everybody else is going to go through. Let me give you a story that I remember hearing growing up in church. This is a story that my dad used to say. There was two people duck hunting, and one was a Christian, and the boss that took his employee was not a believer. He was not a Christian. Now the boss looks at the employee who is a Christian kind of arrogantly and says, "How come you Christians are always talking about temptation? Temptation this, temptation that." He says, "I'm not a Christian and I never go through temptation." So the employee looks at his boss and says, "Let me give you an example." He says, "In a scenario where there's two ducks and we shoot both of them, one falls dead on the floor, no movement, not moving at all because he's dead, but then one is injured and is getting away. Which one would you try to grab first? Would you try to grab the dead duck or would you try to grab the one that is getting away?" The boss said, "Well, I would try to grab the one that's getting away." He said, "Exactly." He said, "The reason Christians feel temptation is because we're the ones that are getting away, and the devil is trying to tempt us back into living that fleshly lifestyle." And he looked at his boss and said, "And you're that dead duck. The devil already has you in the bag. That's why you feel no temptation." What is temptation? Temptation is an invitation that the devil is making to your life. Now, these temptations can rise up in many different forms and fashions. It could be a temptation to stop believing. It can be a temptation of lust. It can be a temptation of fear. It can be a temptation of getting angry and holding hatred to your heart and not forgiving somebody. Temptation shows up in many different ways and fashions. But as God's chosen, the devil is mad that you are living for the Lord, and he is going to try to stop you, to hinder you, stopping your progress from following the Lord. And I want to read you two scriptures, so pay attention because I know that God's going to speak to your life. One is in Exodus 5 and the other one is in Exodus 6. Look what happens to Pharaoh when God's people, Moses is in Egypt, and he's telling Pharaoh, let God's people go. Now they're making bricks with straw. They're working as slaves every single day, making bricks with straw. And Moses and Aaron are telling Pharaoh, let God's people go. But look what Pharaoh does. When Pharaoh hears this, he becomes angry. He becomes upset. And as I'm reading this, you're going to be able to see why in your life it gets so difficult sometimes. So pay attention to this. Exodus chapter 5, verse 1 through 23. Afterward, Moses and Aaron went and said to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go, and they may hold a feast with me in the wilderness. But Pharaoh said, who is the Lord, that I should obey his voice and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and moreover, I will not let Israel go. Then they said, the God of the Hebrews has met with us. Please, let us go 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God, lest he fall upon us with the pestilence or with the sword. But the king of Egypt said to them, Moses and Aaron, why do you take the people away from their work? Get back to your burdens. So Pharaoh says, I ain't going to let them go. I don't know who God is. And I want you to see something. I want you to see the strategy of the devil, because we see it in Pharaoh towards the Israelites. He's getting upset. He's saying, why are you taking the people away from their burdens? And look what he does. Look at the strategy of the devil. And look at why I'm saying only God's chosen will go through this. Remember, you're not the dead duck. You're the one that God has a plan for. You're the one that's got away from the enemy. You're the one living in purpose. You're not the dead duck. This is why only God's chosen people go through this. And Pharaoh said, behold, the people of the land are now many, and you make them rest from their burdens. The same day, Pharaoh commanded the taskmasters of the people and their foremen, you shall no longer give the people straw to make bricks, as in the past. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. But the number of bricks that they made in the past, you shall impose on them. You shall by no means reduce it, for they are idle. Therefore they cry, let us go and offer sacrifices to our God. And then look what Pharaoh says. Let heavier work be laid on the men, that they may labor at it and pay no regard to lying words. So what is Pharaoh saying? Pharaoh is saying the reason that they're having time to think about worshiping God is because they have too much free time on their hands. And then he says, make them work harder. Take away the straw. Let them go get their own straw, but you got to make them create the same amount of bricks. Can you see why only God's chosen people go through this? Can you see why the enemy is mad at you? As soon as you decide, as soon as you make it up in your mind, man, I'm going to live for God. I'm going to start living for the Lord. I'm going to wake up and make God my priority in the morning, or I'm going to make God my priority in the day, or I'm going to start going to church more. I'm going to start reading more the Bible, or I'm going to start fellowshipping with Christians. I'm going to leave the alcohol. I'm going to leave the cigarettes, or I'm going to leave the drugs. As soon as you start saying, I'm going to leave this, leave that, and I'm going to get serious with the Lord, who rises up? The devil. And what does he do? He makes life more difficult. He brings storms. He brings struggles. Now pay attention. He will bring storms and he will bring struggles, but vengeance is the Lord's. God's not going to leave you alone. So look what happens here. So the taskmasters and the foremen of the people went out and said to the people, thus says Pharaoh, I will not give you straw. Go and get your straw yourselves wherever you can find it, but your work will not be reduced in the least. So the people were scattered throughout the whole land of Egypt to gather stubble for straw. The taskmasters were urgent, saying, complete your work, your daily task, each day as if there was straw. And the foremen of the people of Israel, whom Pharaoh's taskmasters had set over them, were beaten and were asked, why have you not done all the task of making your bricks today and yesterday as in the past? Then the foreman of the people of Israel came and cried to Pharaoh, why do you treat your servants like this? No straw is given to your servants, yet they say to us, make bricks, and behold, your servants are beaten, but the fault is your own people's. But he said, you are idle, you are idle. That is why you say, let us go and sacrifice to the Lord. Go now and work. No straw will be given you, but you must still deliver the same number of bricks. The foremen of the people of Israel saw that they were in trouble when they said, you shall by no means reduce the number of bricks, your daily task each day. They met Moses and Aaron, who were waiting for them as they came out from Pharaoh, and they said to them, the Lord look on you and judge, because you have made us stink in the sight of Pharaoh and his servants, and have put a sword in their hand to kill us. So what happened? It got difficult. It got hard. Struggles, problems, storms, battles, because they wanted to serve God, because God was calling them out of Egypt. What does Egypt represent for a Christian today? Egypt represents the ways of the world. It represents living in sin. Because God has called you out of the ways of the world, because God has called you out of living for sin. What happens when you make your choice? What happens when you make that decision? What happens when you start pointing your mind towards God? The devil rises up and he gets upset. And he wants to create burdens on you, and stress on you, and fear on you, and anxiety on you. And look what the taskmasters say. Actually, look what the foremen say. They told Moses and they told Aaron, the foremen of the Israelites. They said, may God look upon you and judge. In other words, man, you're making our life difficult. Man, before you got here, everything was okay. Before you got here, everything was bearable. Everything was endurable. Before you got here, our life was easy. Doesn't it seem like that? Doesn't it seem that before you gave your life to Jesus, everything was easier? Doesn't it seem that before you decided to start living by faith, to start living for real for God, doesn't it seem before you made that choice to live for real for God, doesn't it seem like it was easier? It was easier when I was in the world. It was easier when I was living in sin. It was easier when I was doing what I wanted to do. Now that I made my mind for living for God, it's so difficult. It's so hard. Why? Here's the answer. Because Pharaoh is mad. Who is Pharaoh? The devil. He is mad. As soon as you make up in your mind, I'm going to trust God, I'm going to believe God, the devil gets mad. And what is the purpose of all this heavy burden? What is the purpose of all this stress, of all this struggle? So that they won't have time to think about the Lord. Why is the devil raising up these storms in your life? Why is the enemy raising up these battles? Why? Because he wants you to be so distracted, so preoccupied with all the stress and with all the struggle that you take your eyes away from the Lord. But look what happens here. Look what Moses and Aaron say. They pray to God and they're confused too. But then look what God answers them. Then Moses turned to the Lord and said, "Oh Lord, why have you done evil to this people? Why do you ever send me? Why did you ever send me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name." In other words, God kind of like a little bit like Adam. Ever since you sent me, God, it's been getting more difficult for these people. Ever since you called me to deliver these people, it's been going worse for them. God, why are you doing this? See, even Moses doesn't understand. That's why many times I don't understand, and many times you don't understand why you go through the battles you go through, and why I go through the battles I go through. Because we don't understand many times. Moses didn't understand. He's saying, God, why are you doing this? Before I came to these people, they were okay. Now that you sent me, supposedly you were going to deliver them. Now that you sent me, everything's going worse. Look what happens here. For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people, and you have not delivered the people at all. Moses saying, you haven't done nothing, God. It's getting worse. It's not getting better. It's getting worse, God. You haven't done nothing. Pharaoh's mad. Pharaoh's making their work harder. Why? Because he doesn't want them to walk in faith. Be delivered. Be set free from Egypt. Let go. Oh, no, no, no. You got too much free time. You got so much free time that you're thinking of hope. You're thinking of a good life. You're thinking of freedom. You're thinking of deliverance. You got too much free time that you're having faith. Let me oppress you. Let me send stress to you. Let me send more work to you. Let me send more battles to you. Let me make life difficult. And where's God? Even Moses is saying, you haven't delivered them at all. But this is exactly where God wanted Pharaoh. And this is exactly where God wanted the people. Look what God tells Moses and Aaron in Exodus chapter 6, verse 1. But the Lord said to Moses, now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh. For with a strong hand he will send them out, and with a strong hand he will drive them out of this land. God said, that's exactly what I wanted Pharaoh to do. I wanted Pharaoh to get tougher. I wanted Pharaoh to get mad, because now you're going to see what I'm going to do in Pharaoh's life. Now you're going to see how I'm going to deliver the people with a strong hand. And what happens? God sent 10 plagues that made Pharaoh buckle at his knees. I want to tell you something. It's difficult. There's storms. There's struggles. There's problems. But God, in that moment, in that situation, in that scenario, in those course of events, that's when God is going to step in and he's going to move in your life through the stress, through the struggle, through the battles, through the storms. That's exactly what happened in their life. And this is a picture of what Jesus Christ would do in our lives when we trust in what he did for us on the cross and on his resurrection on the third day. He died for the salvation of your soul and for the forgiveness of your sins. And he resurrected on the third day to give us a brand new life. When you put your faith in Jesus, when you trust him through the stress, through the struggle, through the storm, you will see the mighty hand of God in your life. And this story, let's fast forward. Did God deliver his people from Egypt? Oh, yes, he did. And he opened the Red Sea and he took them to the promised land. But what was the strategy of the devil the whole time? He tried to take their attention away from having faith in God and make them focus on their struggles. So I want to tell you that today. Don't let the enemy make you focus on your struggles. Give those struggles to God. Believe the Lord. The same way he delivered the people is the same exact way through Jesus Christ. What he did for you on the cross and his resurrection on the third day is the same way that you also have deliverance and you also will have the victory. Keep trusting the Lord. God bless you. I hope this video was a blessing to your life. If it was, do me a favor. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. I post weekly videos that I hope and pray will be a blessing to your life. So if you don't want to miss tomorrow's video, subscribe and turn on those notifications so you can be alerted every time I post. Another thing, if you want to show your appreciation for this video or for this channel, you can do so in one of two ways. The first way looks something like this. It's called Super Thanks. Super Thanks are always a great blessing to my life. They're always greatly appreciated. If you're on mobile, you can find it next to the share button. Super Thanks of any amount from 99 cents and on are a great blessing to my life. The second way that you can show your appreciation, and this is on a monthly basis, is called channel memberships. Channel memberships that my channel offers is $5 a month, about $1.25 a week, and in return you get special badges, special stickers, and access to archive videos that I post. As a matter of fact, I have one video in the link in the description. If you want to become a channel member to have access to that video, just click the link in my description and you'll have access to that video. God bless you. I'll see you soon, Lord willing. And do me a favor, before you click off, watch one of these videos popping up on your screen. Have a blessed day.